A quick introduction before we get into this week's episode. Matt Barnes, our guest, since the recording of this podcast, has launched a greeting card company. I think his designs are awesome. They feature the same kind of collage artwork that he talks about later in the interview, but he doesn't actually talk about these cards during the interview, which is why I wanted to bring special attention to them now. You can maybe see them in the background here. And if you'd like to learn more, you can check out barnescards.com. This is not a sponsored post by any means. It's just, I think his work is great, and I wanted to bring attention to it. So thanks, and let's get into the episode. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Design Exchange. Today with me, Matthew Barnes.
All of it. Mr. Barnes on the internet.
Mr. Barnes?
Yeah, all spelled out.
We are coming to you from a parking garage, one of Matt's favorite locations in Columbus.
Yeah, it's beautiful here. There's a great overlook of the city here. You can see for miles. All the way west, you can watch the sunset here. It's a beautiful location. I've been coming here for years. I'll come up here just to meditate, just to watch the sunset, to look at people and assume they're little tiny ants, and wonder what's going on in their mind. Yeah, just kind of a good location to ponder the pleasantries of life.
Would you mind telling us a little bit of your background? Like, I know that you've been involved with different aspects of design and art as well, right?
Yeah.
So, like, how involved were you with art in high school? And then, because I actually don't have much of a memory of you being that into art.
Yeah.
So what changed, and like, how did it develop into an interest and into a career?
So, way back. So, I was born in Portland, Oregon. We lived in Illinois, Missouri, Arizona, Kansas, moved to Ohio when I was 13, turning 14. Art was kind of always my solace. It was the thing that I could turn to like spend my time with. Social engagements were difficult having moved so many different places. So I would connect with people, formulate friendships, and then have to kind of be uprooted from those. And the thing that I turned to all the time was like drawing. My dad was a television cameraman, so I found some solace also in photography. We went on a few trips, and some of my fondest memories are of my father and I walking around big cities just photographing till wee hours of the morning. When I moved to Ohio, I was tepid in my attempt to socially adapt, so I looked at what was culturally appropriate and tried to like formulate myself into that, but always having kind of this interest in the arts. I mean, I continued my practices of art and photography. When I got into high school, I witnessed a couple of performances on stage and like fell in love. There was a girl that I fell in love with on stage and then started connecting with her. And then we maintained our relationship, and then I got involved into theater, and then from theater I got involved in choir, and then
I know you more from theater and choir.
Yeah, I think our interaction together came from more of like in our senior year, even though we went to high school together all 4 years, and we probably spent the most time together in our senior year through choir and perhaps a little theater. I was in 4 productions senior year and had such a great time with it. I auditioned at Otterbein, and their Division III school couldn't offer scholarships. They're like, we want to leapfrog you through 2 years of our programming just straight into the BFA program for acting. And I was like, so you're telling me I got it? And they're like, yeah, you got it. We want you here. And I'm like, how much is tuition? And they were like, yeah, you might end up with like $100,000 in debt when you graduate, but it'll be all right. And I'm like, I didn't have I had a very bleak outlook on what my future might look like with a theater degree. So I thought, I'm going to be serving tables in New York till I'm 50, trying to pay off $100,000 in debt. And you just told me I have it. So I'm just going to X out of this and say thanks. I promised my parents that I would get a college degree. I always told them that I wanted to be on Second City. Like I was like, I want to be on Saturday Night Live, and the way through that is the way to that is through Second City. And they're like, but you need a practical education. And I was like, all right, I'll get the practical education, then go do that. Well, while I was in school, I decided that I thought like business was going to be the best approach. So I was headed into Fisher College of Business at Ohio State, specifically in marketing, kind of a creative field. And this epiphany kind of hit me where I was like, I can do what I want to do, still get a college degree, and have this kind of ancillary experience in the fine art world, because I'd taken an art history class and just kind of been enthralled with art history. And so I applied to the BFA program at Ohio State for photography, which seemed like a natural trajectory with my family history, and got denied. And I was kind of like, felt low about it. I auditioned. There was a huge audition on Ohio State campus for As the World Turns. I stood in line for 6 hours.
The soap opera?
Yeah, the soap opera. It's now offline, or it's now off air.
Okay.
But it had like 80 some seasons or something. It was a wildly successful and popular soap opera. But they were doing this college tour, and they were auditioning kids at, I think, 12 schools. I stood in line for 6 hours and auditioned against 800 other kids, and I got cast in the principal role for one of the speaking roles on As the World Turns. I was like, yeah, this is awesome. Then I applied and had a great time. Didn't do anything more with it after that. I still had like about a year and a half to graduate. I applied to the BFA program for photography again, got in, and then I spent a majority of my time at school. Like I didn't get a job. I just stayed focused on producing work for my curriculum. And at times I would do 2 projects when one was due, just to get the extra feedback.
Okay, so what was your curriculum?
My focus was photography, but I was really interested in like mid 20th century art, like from the time of Claes Oldenburg and Robert Rauschenberg, Andy Warhol, Jackson Pollock. From that period forward, I was really interested in the creation process. A little bit further than that, I fell in love with Marcel Duchamp, obviously with his proclamations of what art is and what art is not. And that's what really inspired me to kind of move forward into art creation, was that you can point at something and call it art for whatever subset of ideals you want to apply to it. So I started making tons and tons of art in my basement with friends. And then I threw a huge exhibition at Ohio State. I filled a 10,000 square foot warehouse with tons of creations that I'd made in conjunction with other people. I put up some of my photography and got written up in a number of local publications, and thought that I was on my way towards a fine art career. But there's a lot more work involved in it than just making the work. There's a lot of marketing that has to take place. And so after I graduated, I continued my practice pretty significantly with photography. I've been inspired by the photography of William Eggleston, Stephen Shore, and Joel Meyerowitz. They're kind of happenstance photographers that walk around and bump into moments of harmony, visual harmony. And so that's kind of what I do. I'll take long walks and just hope that I bump into a composition that's loaded full of color, loaded full of nuanced action, and then capture that and catalog it
As a photograph.
Mm-hmm. As a photograph. And then, after I graduated from Ohio State, I moved to Tennessee for 6 months. Couldn't normalize the culture, and decided to move back to Columbus. I was a caddy at Muirfield for a long time. And so I had an opportunity to interact with some exceptional entrepreneurs, exceptional elite business people from all over the world. And I took a lot from our conversations. I mean, you're spending 4 and 5 hours with some of these people, and you can dig into their life with, great questions. And so I was inspired to start businesses after that. And I started an event marketing company. The question posed from one of my main clients to one of his friends was, our city is not known for anything. We don't really have an identity. It's like football, beer, and shopping. And what else do we have here? So I took that as kind of a challenge and put together this event that showcased all of the local talent in one place at one time. So we used Gay Street right here. We didn't shut down the street, but we used all of the businesses and filled up each of the businesses with some event. So going east, we filled up Duomici, which is a restaurant. We had solo musicians playing the cello or the flute alongside some of their great culinary pieces. And after a certain period of time, they would be escorted down to another space where there was a poetry slam, and then some DJs spinning, and then they were escorted from there into another space that had like a wine tasting on one side, a chocolate tasting on the other, then entered into the main space, which used to serve as an old bank vault, and there was a jazz trio in the corner, a fine art exhibition taking place all over. Then we had an experimental dance team kind of crawl throughout the space, and then the evening culminated with a fashion show with local designers showcasing their designs. It was a great networking event for people. We had 700 to 800 people for the 2 years that it operated. That was 2005 and 2006. At the end of 2006, we'd ran out of cash. We invested a lot of our own money. First rule of business, never use your own money. Because we ate a significant amount. And after that, I was more interested in my own creations. I turned inward and began making more found object assemblages. I'd fallen in love with Picasso. I kind of dismissed Picasso all through high school and college as being a cliche artist that everybody talked about. But then I was in Miami Beach for Art Basel and almost came face to face, like literally bumped into a Picasso sculpture. And I backed away from it and was like completely enamored by it. And then I started making drawings and making masks out of found objects, and created this entire series of faces. Let's see, after that, marketing has always been a part of my experience, like trying to find a way to create an audience for my creations. And it's not simple because they don't really do anything for you. They don't nourish you physically. They're not shoes, or they're not a shirt. It's not something you can use over and over. It's like a thing. So when I graduated from Ohio State and I moved back to Columbus, I started creating these like trash sculptures and leaving my email address on them. And then if people emailed me when they found them, I knew that I had a legit lead. So I would log them into a database of leads. And then anytime I had a show, I'd email them and say, hey, I'm having a show. So it was a greater likelihood of having a buyer. But walking around with a big bag full of like broken trash sculptures got kind of tedious. And so it was about the time that Twitter came out, and I started creating these square collages on 4-inch by 4-inch particle board. I'd paint it and then glue down these really random collages. They were kind of like physical tweets, and then I'd hide them in the environment and photograph them, giving away visual clues to their location. And then I would tweet it out to my following, and my following would race each other to grab it.
Oh.
I would add value to them too. So I'd link up with a local brand and make the tile worth like anywhere from $5 to $500. And so it created a frenzy when people would see it. This is back when Twitter would like live feed anything that came through. Same with Instagram. It would be live feed. And so when it would show up, people knew that it was right then and there. And they'd be like, I'm 2 miles away from that. I think I can get there really quick. So they'd race each other and grab it. I won some awards with it. I won an Addy. I worked with great brands like Corona and Time Warner Cable. And
Now, when you say that these tiles could be worth money, that means like on a secondary market, people would bid for them or buy them, or that like you could bring this to that restaurant and get a
the latter.
discount on the food or whatever.
Yeah, the latter. My hope was that it would create a separate art market without my involvement, where people would trade them back and forth like old baseball cards. But it ended up being kind of the latter, where it would be worth, $10 off your meal at such and such restaurant, or $500 night stay at the West End or something. And that got me really involved in collage. And so I started making a lot of collage work, which I don't think that I would have ever anticipated as a part of my art making experience. But I make a lot of paper cutout art now. It's a way for me to reduce my inventory too. My studios, I've had several studios over the years, and my studios always just get filled to the rafters with random junk.
Oh. So do you have a studio right now?
I just left a studio down on South High Street. My artwork is parsed out right now in 4 places. So it's still over at the old studio. We had to leave that space because of zoning issues. It wasn't zoned properly for us to inhabit at the time. But I've got stuff stored in an area that I can't make the artwork there, but I can at least leave it there. My friend who I partnered with on my recent, it's like a business venture. It's like an experience. It was called Leisure Club. He's got stuff at his house. I've got stuff at my house. Currently, I make most of my work in my dining room. Yeah, right now.
I saw some posts of yours about Leisure Club. This is how it looks from arm distance away. Right? It's like the ultimate man cave. And then if you want to use it, you can rent it for the hour, rent it for the day.
Mm-hmm.
How close am I?
Spot on.
All right.
Spot on. Yeah, it was like the ultimate man cave. It was kind of an escape. The way it culminated, my friend Jared and I, and my partner in Leisure Club, we've been hanging out together on different creative ventures for the last 6 or 7 years. And we'd been meeting for happy hour like once a week and going over different ideas, and just looking around like, man, it's really loud in here, and this playlist sucks, and I don't want to have to keep tugging on the bartender's shirt sleeve to change the channel on the TV. By the way, these beers are really expensive. Like, what if we just pooled our happy hour budgets and just got a studio, and we can go there and brainstorm our ideas, and I can have a little studio, and we can drink some beers and invite our friends over, and we can control the playlist, and we can put on a sports program if we want, or we can watch an old movie. So that's what we did. And we got this small studio at 400 West Rich right over here. And during Franklinton Fridays, we'd open the door, people would come in. And the way that it was set up is we've got a leather couches, and the decor on the wall is like vintage Americana. So we'd have a poster of an F-16, and then a poster of Farrah Fawcett, and then a small American flag, and then some sports hero imagery and things that people could connect to from their past. And the way that we, philosophized on it was that we are creating a space where people can come agree on something to start. And then a conversation opens up where they can get detailed about whatever it is that they want to. But it's a base level for them to have a memory about something. And maybe that picture of Farrah Fawcett, their uncle had in his den, and the other person's grandfather had in his basement. And so they're at a starting point where like, I have a memory about this image, and now we're connected in some way. And now we can start a conversation about something more detailed. It was kind of a way to network without the premise of networking being there. What we found is going to these happy hours that a lot of the people that we were surrounding ourselves with couldn't shut off work. They constantly were on. about, their startup or their day-to-day job life. And one of the classes I took in college, it talked about there's 3 parts to your life. You have production, labor, and leisure. Your production is how you put yourself together in the morning, eating, sleeping, not sleeping, eating, bathing, cleaning your house, learning, reading the paper, things that you're doing to produce yourself. Your labor is what you do to bring in money, and then your leisure is what you do to enjoy your time. What we witnessed is a lot of people just still focused on labor in their leisure time. So we're like, why would we want that? There's so much to be said for your leisure time, to where you can disconnect from your labor, but still process the information that you were dealing with at that time. So our premise was to bring people together over leisure, like get them to hang out, whatever that meant. If it was putting while drinking a beer, casually playing a game of basketball, playing an old video game, watching an old movie. So we created an experience for people to come just enjoy themselves. It lasted for as long as it did, and it was nice. It was just like a little blip in history.
Is that the kind of thing you might try to do again if the right stars are aligned?
100%.
Yeah.
I'm really into experiences. I'm into creating memorable moments for people. Memorable moments for people as individuals and memorable moments for people as collectives.
Is that why you suggested we meet at this location?
Yeah, well, this is just one of my favorite locations. I mean, it seems like you've had a really robust experience since we last saw each other. You've been all over the world. You've done a lot of great things with your own experience. I've done a lot of great things since, but a lot of it's been rooted right here. And so I've been able to dig into the nooks and crannies of this city, and this happens to be one of my favorite places to just come and be.
I hadn't really been in Columbus a lot. Even if I came for Thanksgiving, I'm just with family the whole time. I'm not trying to be a person in Columbus, right? But last year I came here and I met a friend who's had moved back here from San Francisco. I mean, he's a Columbus native, but he had left for many years, started some companies, and then decided to move back. And kind of through following him around one day, I totally gained a new appreciation. We walked around the streets, between here and German Village, and there was some concert at some guy's house that he's just, he's like, I have a house. These musicians are good. I'm going to, invite my friends over. We're going to have wine and listen to these musicians. Yeah. It's this kind of culture that I think as high schoolers in Columbus, in Cowtown, Columbus, Ohio, we dreamt about.
Yeah.
And a lot of us left searching for, art meccas or cultural meccas outside of Columbus, even though there was some pretty significant stuff being done. It has always been some significant stuff being done here. I could say when I was in high school, the last thing I wanted to do was stay in Ohio. Yeah. And at this point, if I was to live in America again, Columbus would be pretty high on my list of places I was going to consider.
It's not a bad place. I've had options to move to Chicago and move to New York, move to LA, move to Nashville, or Portland. And what I find endearing about Columbus is the access to the creative capital here. There's a lot going on, and it really is about what you make of it. I could go to Chicago or New York and probably entrench myself in some of the creative environments that are going on there, but I don't know that the impact would be as broad. It might be good, and I might make a decent living, but I don't know that the resonance would be as sharp as it is here. If you do something creatively in Columbus, it resonates pretty significantly, I believe, across multiple social categories, for sure. I have a love-hate with Columbus, Ohio, personally. Like, I love it from the standpoint of the networks I built here, personally and professionally, are good. Oh, cool. The, I guess, disdain I have with it is that the mediocrity that it boils down to. It boils up to and boils down to. You go to places like Miami Beach, and you're in one corner of one of their mediocre parts of town has more going on than you can fill in an evening here inside 270.
What do you attribute that to?
Water and sunlight.
Oh, yeah? I mean, just so because it's, I mean, that's a place people go to party. It's a place,
Yeah.
there's a lot of cocaine.
There is a lot of cocaine.
I've heard
Yeah.
that Miami is got a lot of cocaine.
The documentary Cocaine Cowboys talks about how Miami was built on cocaine. Yeah, you're right.
So is that the
I don't know.
The differences are less ocean, less sun, and less cocaine.
We've
Subtract
got,
those things, less Cuban sandwiches, and you got Columbus.
yeah, it's gray here 300 days out of the year. We've got clouds. We have all the seasons. The warm seasons are shortened. The open-mindedness is greater here than it is in a lot of other areas, but it's a pocket. I think when you get to the coasts, west or east, the open-mindedness is significantly higher. The appreciation of the arts is higher. They're not economically strapped. Ohio is, it's astute, kind of. But we've got one guy here worth $4.5 billion. He's like our wealthiest guy in the state. You go to San Francisco, there's like 10 guys on one street worth that much.
So less chance for patrons of the art.
Yeah, much less chance of patrons of the art. Supporters, people might support, but they're doling out like fractions of what's being doled out in coastal cities.
And then there's a much lower population density as well.
I think the core, Columbus, Ohio, it's like 1.2 million, but that includes all the way out into Powell, into Delaware, I think. And so your square footage is significantly larger than it would be in San Francisco or even Detroit. We're very sparse. And yeah, I don't know. Our main industries here are medicine, insurance, distribution. We're not known for, we don't have like a moniker. We're not like the Big Apple. We're not like Hollywood.
We have monikers, we just aren't proud of them.
Yeah.
Like
Or they change so often.
C-Bus and Cowtown.
Yeah.
Right? I don't know. There must be others.
Yeah.
The 614.
Yeah.
I like
People wear their pride here. But to what avail?
Well, okay, here's a critique. I had one of my best friends growing up. His parents were both art professors at OSU. And after he finished high school, maybe university, they moved away. They got teaching jobs at other schools. And one year they came back, and I got to meet them after they had been away from Columbus. We'd both been away from Columbus for, 5 or 10 years at the time. And I was trying to kind of ask them, so what's your take on, what do you miss about Columbus? Or, how does it compare to other things? And their maybe number one thing they don't like about Columbus is probably the number one thing that many people in Columbus do like, which is like sports, right? They're like, there's a lot of support for sports here. A lot of people really into the Buckeyes, not so much art.
Right.
In comparison to the fever that there is for college football. And I
think income is like is a player in how people distribute their own personal wealth and what they find important. And experiences are a big part of that. Sports provide them with a good experience for the most part. It's a very social experience. It's very safe most of the time. Safe from the standpoint of it's not going to challenge you personally. And so that's what they spend their money on. Where if I'm someone in a Miami, for example, and I'm working for a coastal distribution company, my income is going to substantiate it to where I can support the arts and sports. Where here it's like, maybe this is just my personal opinion, but the income here isn't nearly as high as it is in other cities. And so people justify the way they spend their money on like immediacy, on things that are like not that expensive, kind of maybe, that are going to provide them with an experience good enough that they can go back to work on Monday and talk about that fun experience. It's not very diverse. It's diverse, but it's not. Ohio State was called the weirdest campus of all college campuses, and it does have a very diverse population. There's a lot of different cultures coming in to Columbus, Ohio from all over the world, which makes for a really rich, beautiful experience here in Columbus, Ohio. But I still want for more here. I do.
So then what's your next plan?
Mine?
Yeah.
I'm cooking something up right now. Still got Leisure Club in my pocket. I've been really into that, the Nonchalance Agency, Jeff Hull out of San Francisco, and these multi-step experiences for people that are in the real world, and not just exhibits. Popular things right now like Meow Wolf. I don't know if you've heard of Meow Wolf or
No, I haven't.
So it's a spot in Santa Fe. This collective of artists got together. They solicited some cash from George R.R. Martin, and they built out this beautiful visual experience. It's amazing from what I understand. I've never been. Plan to go, but you walk in and it's like an old house, and then you open up the refrigerator and it's a doorway into another world. And then when you step down into it, it's this psychedelic underworld. And they've got these crazy rooms that are they're installed. They're installations by other artists, and they're fascinating. They're beautiful. And you spend a few hours gallivanting throughout this entire space. You walk away inspired or with a new perspective. And then that's it. You can go back and visit again, maybe when the exhibits turn, and a new group of artists come in and do something else in one of the other rooms. But it's not something that encapsulates time. So this is going to get a little heady. But I was sitting in my apartment with my two boys, and my two boys are huge Star Wars fans. They're big, like, futuristic dudes. They love anything to do with progress or the future. And they were sitting there playing with their toys at the kitchen island. And my youngest son looks up and he's like, "Dad, what's a sixth dimension?" And I was like, "Great question. I don't know. Let's go to YouTube and find out." So there's this great video on YouTube, and it's called The 11 Dimensions of Reality. And it talks about one dimension is like just a point. 2 dimensions is a point to another point. It's a line. 3 dimensions is where we are right now. Length times width times height. 4th dimension is motion. The 5th dimension is another line. It's the passage of time from your birth to your death. And when I heard about the 5th dimension, this kind of like light bulb went off in my mind that you can curate content within the confines of a time frame. People do it when they go to movies. They're spending 2 hours. They enter the movie theater. They watch the movie for 2 hours. The movie ends. They go on about their way. But that 2-hour time frame, you can curate to be whatever it is that you want. And watching the Institute and seeing how people are spending their time and how experiences are the new like experiences are almost like wealth creation at this point. Our boomers identified their success by the gathering of quality goods, where Gen Xers and millennials are quantifying their success by the amount of experiences that they've had. If that's the case, then why not curate an experience that's like really exceptional and inspiring and amazing? So if a person, like escape rooms are a good example. People are paying, $75 to spend 45 minutes in a room to conduct a bunch of clues, but it's in a fixed space. The documentary on the Institute, their experience is throughout the entire city. It's all over, and it's over a very long period of time. But my next idea will come within shrinking experiences into a time frame for people to experience around a geographic location and not in one physical spot. So I'm really inspired by the idea of providing awesome experiences for people and guiding them through that experience with some story or some subset of tasks or clues, and then for them to walk away with some level of satisfaction, whether that's inspiration or excitement or evangelizing the concept.
I'm gonna cut this one out because this is a freebie for you.
Okay.
Do that,
Yeah.
but incorporate sports.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's a great idea. Yeah. It'll be a success.
Yeah, do that.
Yeah.
That could work.
That's a great idea. Yeah, I thought filmmaking or film was going to be something that would be really awesome to experience or to do, but it's limited.
Where did filmmaking come from?
My dad being a television cameraman,
Oh, right.
photography, acting. I thought, like, if I got a degree in photography, I'd be able to see how I would look from behind the camera as well as in front of the camera. And then that became not as important as like actually providing an amazing experience for people. The feedback that I got off of the Twitter game, it was called Tweet and Go Seek. The feedback I got from participants was like humbling. We did one year where the last prize, it was a campaign that we got hired out to do from the Greater Columbus Arts Council. And the final prize was like a $500 gift. And we created this 3-step process for the person who was going to get the final piece. And we waited for that person at the final location. They had to, they had to go hit a golf ball into the mouth of a clown. And then once they did that, they had to rush over and ask this bartender ridiculous question. And the keyword, the answer from the bartender would be the location where they were to head to get the final piece. When the guy who won finished, he grabbed it and we were waiting in the wing. And we watched him and he like broke down crying. And we walked up to him. We're like, "Hey man, are you okay? Like everything all right? Like congratulations, that's a big prize." And he was like, "Man, this is so amazing." He's like, I've never had an experience like this. He's like, "I've been unemployed for 2 years." He's like, "I haven't been able to take my wife on a date." He's like, "This is going to afford me the opportunity to like show my wife a good time. And I just can't thank you enough for putting this together," and blah, blah, blah. And it was kind of a light bulb for me at that moment where I was like, this is the type of stuff that I want to do. Even if this is the reaction I get every time or not, I want to do this for people where they have this sense of connection to the experience that they're having, such that they'll like emote or evangelize on behalf of, or try to emulate on their own in some way. So yeah, I just want to create awesome experiences for people.
Yeah. experience design or user experience design is this term that's become very, let's say, well used, but maybe overused, abused maybe in the last, I think in the last 10 years. I read before I got into game design, I read this article from the guy who I eventually ended up apprenticing under. And it was an article about game design through the lens of visiting Disney World. And kind of pretty early on in the article, it talks about like when you walk down Main Street and you smell popcorn, like that. It's not that they want you to be able to eat popcorn. It's that the smell of the popcorn is part of the experience design. It's like, and you're stepping
100%.
in, so.
The way that we've talked about that is it's the visceral nature of space. In our critique of our happy hour adventures, we would be in restaurants or bars where the focus was the taste. You're tasting this beer. All of the other sensory experiences around here are kind of like sub thoughts. So the sound, it's like really loud. People are talking. The playlist isn't that awesome. The smell, it smells like vomit, or it smells like backed up plumbing, or the sights, it's people in their, casual t-shirts and cut off jean shorts, or the TVs are on some sports program that nobody's paying attention to. So they're focusing in on one of your senses, but as a human being, your senses are on fire all the time. And me as a designer or a brand, my job is to ignite those senses as best as possible, all of them. I want, for me personally, as a creator, I want everybody's senses to be turned on when they're in an environment that I've curated. So the visuals, I want them to be like blown away by the visuals, or not alarmed, but like they're very aware of what's happening around them visually. And then sensory, like their sense of smell, it's going to be leather, bourbon, or coffee that I want kind of around in the sense, in their sense of smell. Sounds, it's got to be soft. It's got to be something that's like not offensive, something that might spark memory. So it's usually music that your grandparents or parents would have been listening to when you were real young. So it sparks like a sense of nostalgia. Feels, in terms of your sense of touch, it's got to be things that are comfortable, that allow you to like sink in and then absorb your other senses as well. So it all plays together in this visceral nature of space. And I don't think brands or creators on a whole are paying attention to that. Obviously, Disneyland has a lot of money to invest in market research, so they're gonna play to that with the smell of popcorn and the sounds of their branded content. I think McDonald's does it really well. I think Coca-Cola does it really well. There's a lot of big brands that pay attention to your senses and your emotions.
I flew here today, and part
Welcome.
of my experience coming here was standing in the security line at an airport, right? And I was lamenting how probably I don't really like the act of traveling, right? I like to be in new places, but I don't like the act of traveling,
That sucks.
getting there, right? Standing in lines and sitting in small seats, but potentially waiting in the security line is the worst part about it. It could be the worst part of the whole experience, right?
Agreed.
And in Disney World or Disneyland, the line for the ride is sometimes more interesting than the actual ride.
Yeah.
It depends on the length of the line, because at some point it's just a regular line. But when you get within, let's say, 40 minutes of the actual ride, the line is designed.
Wow.
Like let's say if you go to a Little Mermaid exhibit,
Yes.
most of the line is like these coves and these little holes to look through and see some sort of scene out of the movie
keep
or
your
some little
interest.
interaction that you can do that, so you're already getting into the world of The Little Mermaid, for instance, as you're approaching the ride, and it makes it so if you have to wait in line for 40 minutes, it's a joy instead of a drudgery.
Just sitting there like back and forth, like, when am I going to get on the ride?
Yeah. And most places don't do that.
Yeah.
Have like great lines.
Yeah.
And certainly the airport doesn't.
That's interesting.
I think airports should hire experienced designers like you to, make it less shitty. Right?
So I've got a friend, and he had a influencer marketing company that he recently sold, and he partnered with a furniture design company to create this cafe that showcases their furniture. Cafe serves really excellent quality coffee, and then it's a membership base. People can come in and they can co-work, or they can hold meetings, or they can just enjoy a cup of coffee and hang out. But they were approached by a corporation that had major attrition problems. They just couldn't keep their employees. They couldn't inspire them enough. There were no perks that were worthy. And so they have hired them to create this lounge. It's like an experience lounge in their corporate building. And that's kind of the direction that he's heading, is creating these experiences, or these places for experience to happen more readily, that will engage people and hopefully retain them for their clients. And so I've been interested in that a lot lately, in the development of experiences, not with an ulterior motive, but with the support for something else. I guess that would be an ulterior motive. Creating an experience for people that might be supported by big money, with the intent for it to generate income on behalf of that big money. But still, it's an experience. These people have just had an awesome moment in their life that is now a memory for them, that they might go on and storytell to their group of friends. I don't think there's any problem in...
Something's rolling on top of us.
Are they skateboarding up there? Is Tony Hawk here? Yeah. So I love the idea of experience creation on a multitude of levels.
A lot of the world is ad supported these days, whether that's games or YouTube videos, and maybe that's similar to what you were saying about you're getting an experience, but there is some corporate interest that kind of in the mix.
Mm-hmm.
Or you go to a sporting game, you paid the ticket, that's kind of a commercial transaction, but then also there's probably banners for different brands who are some very large corporation probably is paying the rent for the stadium and has their name on the building. Or
it was kind of what I was attempting to do when I started Civitas Now in 2012. I created the game Tweet and Go Seek in 2009. I beta tested it in
let's get some of this.
Yeah.
I don't know if I got that at all. I just kind of...
That's awesome. I knew they were up there.
Sorry.
That's all right.
It's hard to compete with
coolness.
a parade of longboarders or whatever they were.
Now, I knew at an early age that I did not want to work for other people, but working for other people is kind of have to do it in some instances. So I wanted to be creative. I did not want to be a commercial sellout, but I needed a day job. And then at one point I was like, well, what if I just merge the two? And I'd created that game Tweet and Go Seek, where we're hiding things in the environment and photographing them, giving away visual clues, linking up with brands to add value to them. But what if the platform dies? What if Twitter isn't valid anymore. They changed their algorithm and it's not real time any longer. We can't just base the agency on this one thing. So we used it as a card in our full catalog of offerings when we created Civitas Now. And I'd hired a young man, this boy, to work with me on Tweet and Go Seek. And then we started having conversations, and that's when Civitas Now was born. And that was a way for us to reach out to big brands and have them pay us to do really creative executions. And we did some really awesome stuff for national brands, local brands, and the creativity was awesome. It just wasn't lasting. It was like quick. We'd do the thing, get some attention for it, and then it would get crumbled up and tossed away, and we'd have to chase the next client, which I think is the nature of, the creative industry in terms of commercial creative industry. It's turn and burn constantly. You got to be the next glitziest, glossiest version of something brand new all the time and with a different brand all the time. So I tried to merge the two at one point, did it fairly well, and then just realized I enjoy doing it for people more than I do on behalf of brands. I think the authenticity gets diluted.
Now you're doing art more strictly for passion, but then you've got a day job, and that is still within like the realm of creativity.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in the idle hands with the Devil's Workshop. So I work sun up to sundown till I pass out. I don't watch a lot of TV. So I have a day job, and I also make art just for the sake of making art in hopes to one day, share it with others in some format. And I also collaborate with others on creative endeavors in hopes to create a more lasting or meaningful impact, whether that's short-lived or that's, eternal. I think it gets to elaborate a little bit more on creativity and trying to combine that with the experience of the everyday person. I think that creativity is a natural byproduct. There are people that you hear say like, I'm not creative. I'm not a creative person. While I believe that there are some people that are more attuned to their creativity than others, I don't think that's a true statement. I don't think that people are not creative. Does that make sense? People are creative by nature. You're presented with a problem and you don't have all of the tools to execute, but you still have to accomplish the goal. You're going to figure out a way to make it happen. So people, whether they apply that to art or whether they apply that to their lives, the way that they concoct the answer is creative. And so I think everyone is naturally creative and therefore appreciative of creativity. So even though those people that are like, I'm not creative, but I really like it. Yeah, they really appreciate it, but they're going to appreciate it more when you give them a little bit more back to them and say, you know what, you're actually really a creative person. They're going to feel more invested in the output of their own creativity, but also the ingestion of other people's creativity, therefore kind of exponentiating the creative output of everyone. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay, I agree with everything you just said, but it made me think about taste.
Mm-hmm.
Because certainly everyone also has taste,
Right.
but arguably you can have bad taste and good taste. I don't think there's like good creativity or bad creativity, right? It's more of like a phenomenon. It's like neurons firing.
Yeah, where you're like, I agree that that's really good, or I agree that's not really good. One of my favorite Duchamp quotes is, everything can be art, or anything can be art, but not everything is. And I agree with that 100%. Like anything can be art, but not everything is. And I don't know where the line is for it. Taste is a matter of education and experience.
Something can be executed in great taste and not be art at all.
Right.
Right. Like, do you know Muji?
Yeah.
So it's a
sure.
Japanese no brand
Yeah.
that generally everything is well made. Sorry, let me say that. That's not exactly true. It's made better than IKEA, right? But I mean, it all generally looks good. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
There's nothing
aesthetically.
offensive about it.
Right.
But you could never call it. I couldn't in good conscience call it art because nothing about it is challenging. It's very much establishment. It's
not challenging. Is it easily replicated?
I mean, it's as much art as the Ford Focus is art or something. Or, you know, pick any, like the Honda Accord. You know, it's like not offensive, very popular. Everyone has it. Or the Honda Civic, even better.
Yeah.
The Honda Civic. Right? Like, it's as much art as that. I mean, it's not really, I'm going to say, I did see like a Civic the other day that was weird looking, but
yeah, that's touch though. That's touch on users. So that's integration, right? That's it's not cultural integration. It's social integration. It's some sort of like, there's some kind of integration going on there where you get the Honda Civic off the factory line and then it goes to a lot and there are people that interact with it there, and then it sells off the lot to a particular type of person, and that person treats that object in a particular way.
If someone modifies their car, they've used it as a canvas and they've created art.
Yep.
Yeah. But like the mass-produced item, I think at some point it stops, at some point in that corporate process of producing a commercial good,
it's void of personality.
yeah, at some point you're not making a statement anymore.
Right.
I mean,
it's like Ai Weiwei's sunflower seeds. Did you ever see that?
No.
He created, it was like over 1 million or 10 million sunflower seeds that were all hand painted. Every one of them was like, and then he put them in a pile and they were on exhibit. I forget, at MoMA or something. And is one of those art? All of those collectively could be considered art. They're from someone who claims artist as their title. He didn't touch a single one of them. He had his staff create the items and then place them there. They're all one of a kind.
He's like the creative director or the project manager of the installation.
Yeah, and it's weird because it is validated as art by the institution. The institution said, yeah, that's art. We're going to go ahead and pay you to make that happen. And then we're going to run it. We're going to put a bunch of marketing dollars behind it so that people come view it. But is that hand-painted sunflower seed any different than the Honda Civic coming off the factory line that was also touched by
There's a different
individual human
context.
hands? Yeah.
So,
The intent is different,
yeah.
obviously.
This is like a very interesting gray area of, I mean, I guess when you start saying what is art, when you're trying to define art, right, you very fast can end up in slippery slope and gray area. And maybe as soon as you called something art, it stops being art at that point. Like it was art until you identified it as art. And now that you've put it in,
that's like the definition when people try to define God. This is something I've heard. This maybe gets a little too heady. When you try to put a parentheses on God is the minute that God stops existing.
Parentheses,
like encapsulation.
Yeah.
You try to define it. You try to say this is what it is. Then it like evaporates out of that as being that.
Yes, this is kind of the main tenet of Taoism.
Yeah.
It's like as soon as you name it, it's not the thing that you were trying to name.
Yeah.
It's you just named the thing it was, but not what it has now become.
Right.
You know, it's like always in flux.
Yep.
And so you could never capture that flux.
Yeah.
You
So
know?
don't try.
Yeah. Stop trying so much. you've I think quite eloquently expressed this dynamic between an artist and an audience, in that you want to make something that impacts people, that is sensory, that that's kind of creating some kind of dynamic where the experience of the thing you've made, whether that's a painting or an experience design, causes an emotional reaction to the audience. So other than the desire to do that, like, what inspires you to make art, or like what gets you out of bed in the morning?
It's people. I mean, I love people. I love human beings. I love the human experience. I love being able to smell roses and taste coffee and see the ocean and see mountains and feel a kitten, like those are all things that are awesome experiences. As a creator, I want to try to exponentiate an experience similar to that for people that's multisensory, or that is inside their mind. So in our conversation earlier about the dimensions, the sixth dimension is all possible worlds from a single beginning. So like anything that you could possibly experience in your life from your original origin, so your mom and dad, any life experience that you could possibly have from the origin of your mom and dad. Seventh dimension is all possible experiences from all possible origins. We're not there yet. I'm not ready to start talking.
This isn't like
deeply.
mathematical dimensions, right? It's
yeah, it is, but it isn't. I'm not that smart to communicate on behalf of mathematics.
I mean, do you know a hypercube? Like a hypercube, it's like a fourth dimensional cube, not including time as a dimension. So it's like just spatial dimensions. I guess I didn't mean mathematical, although it's oftentimes represented with. It's pretty much only represented. Yeah,
it is. Like the 11 dimensions of reality are mathematically supported. I don't have the acumen to defend that math, but I can explain the concepts at a very high level, at least up to the seventh dimension.
Because I saw some geometric kind of explanation of higher dimensions.
Oh yeah, it's like the ant, like on a piece of paper. If you fold the piece of paper over, the distance that the ant has to travel shrinks. Is that the same?
Well, that's like a wormhole or something.
Yeah, similar. Yeah.
It involves it does involve being able to fold things and have like their edges touch and stuff, like how you define these geometric dimensions. Like, okay, if I added one more line, but still shoved it in the same space, and that's how you. But what you're talking about, it seems like something a little bit different. Like when you're talking about, okay, all possible experiences from all possible origins, right? This seems more like a Buddhaic or Buddhist.
It's something in here. Like I want people to experience something in their mind. So little personal history. I ended my relationship with my business partner at Civitas now in 2015. I'd started another business with another person that was focused in urban agriculture, something completely outside my realm of experience or knowledge, but it was something I was passionate about at the time. I'd seen a design competition posed to designers that was how to solve food insecurity in urban settings in the 21st century. The winning design was a 55-story skyscraper, as big as the Levesque Tower here. The whole thing was a farm. And I was like, man, I want to do that. I want to make some farms out of skyscraper farms. It'd be sweet. Build 20 of them around Columbus, Ohio, and everybody's fed on subscription services, like it's delivered to their house. Fresh foods is perfect. And I did a survey of the current state of urban agriculture, and it was disjointed, no distribution networks, mostly urban settings run by the locals. And so I met with a engineer from Ohio State. We developed not a program, but a design that was growing food inside shipping containers. You could do 8 times as much food in the same amount of square footage. And we're going to put them in neighborhoods that suffered from high unemployment, lack of transportation, and inaccessibility to jobs. It was way more expensive than just putting them inside old abandoned Walmarts, which would have been a much more and a much easier process. So I abandoned my role with a company that I started to start something else that I gave myself a 6-month runway on, came to the end of 6 months and was like, this is not going to happen within the next 3 years. So I need to jump ship and do something else. I started this art project. I just kind of like went inside, disconnected from everyone that I knew. And I turned to collage. Like, it's just been an art form that I fall on. And I started cutting out pictures, and I would cut out a figure, a person, put them on the sheet. I was using 8.5 by 11 pieces of paper. The goal I gave myself was I'm going to make 50 of these, and then I'm going to move on and do something completely different. But I need to have total control over this. And my goal is to present something to someone visually that when they consume it, it sets off a storyline in their mind. It's like you look at the images and it's a picture of a person and there are other objects cut out around them. It might be a toaster, it might be a car, it might be a house. There's a subset of objects that surround the person that when you look at it, you can go, I know that type of person. In fact, I might know a person that's similar to that who has these objects. Because identity, I think maybe at the time I was maybe going through an identity crisis. And so I was trying to determine what made identity. And it is what you surround yourself with. It's the people you surround yourself with. It's the objects you surround yourself with. Like, a lot of people define their identity by the types of objects that they have. Like, I've got an Under Armour shirt on. That means that I'm athletic, or I support athletics. I've got an iPhone, and that means I like Apple. I've got an iWatch or an Apple Watch, and so I'm an Apple fanboy. And there's a subset of ideals related to someone who identifies with those objects. So I wanted to portray that in these pieces, and so I would cut out a person and then all of the objects, and then you as the viewer looking at it, you see the person and the objects, and then you come up with a story on your own. So the piece is finished in your imagination as the viewer. It's not just finished like you look at it and you're like, oh, that's neat. Like a Jackson Pollock, you might contemplate a Jackson Pollock when you're in its presence. They're huge. They're amazing. They're beautiful pieces of work. It's not going to send you spiraling into another dimension, so to speak, of your own imagination. You're going to think about Jackson Pollock. You're going to think about what was going through his mind, or you're going to think about the colors and how beautiful they are. But it's not going to make you create something in your head. These images that I made, these particular collages that I made, were intended to send the viewer on a trip about what they were viewing. And once they've consumed the entire collection, perhaps they would internalize and figure something out about their own identity.
Is that, did you exhibit that?
No, I don't exhibit. I've got like, I probably have 25 series of works. That's 12 pieces or more in a series that I've made since graduation. I've treated my art making process kind of like I did in college, where I had 2 or 3 projects due a quarter, and then I would move on. And since I've graduated college, what was that, 16 years ago? I've created something every quarter. Sometimes those will extend into each other, and I'll do it like for a full year. but I try to create at least one series of multiple pieces every quarter.
I'm kind of curious that if this piece was designed that a viewer is going to have some, it's going to trigger some motivation within them. But if it doesn't get, if you don't exhibit it, who's it going to trigger?
Right. Maybe it was meant for me all along, selfishly. But no, I would love to exhibit it. I have not found that, back to our conversation about Columbus, Ohio. Columbus, Ohio has a lot of, I wouldn't even call them competitors in the art market. I spend a lot of time observing the major players, Gagosian Gallery, Hauser and Wirth, these major institutions in the art market world. And if you don't have, within your first 10 shows, if you don't have an exhibit at a blue chip gallery, your likelihood for a career is nil. My intent all along from college to now has been to be within that same echelon of Jackson Pollocks and Picassos and Duchamps, and trying to make that happen in Columbus, Ohio is not an option, really. And I fear, selfishly, that if I were to put that on exhibit in Columbus, Ohio, it would mute my possibility for making it a contribution to the canon of art history, which has obviously been, not obviously, but that's what I would like to do with my artwork, is make a significant contribution to the canon of art history.
Is there any effective way to exhibit online?
I can buy some Instagram followers and then contact big galleries and say, hey, I've got a huge following, and if we work together...
Oh, I don't mean like that. I meant like just for like so people can experience the work.
I put it out on my personal handle. I've got probably 5 or 6 different handles on Instagram. And they each serve a different purpose. Ones that are directly connected to me don't serve the same, they don't do as well, because I'll talk about my personal life, or I'll share something with my family, or I'll share a photograph that I find enjoyable from my wanderings around Columbus, Ohio. If I focus it outward, only about the artwork, not related to me as a creator, it gets a greater response. So it's the separation of the maker and the made that I find to be valuable. That kind of goes to the the marketing aspect of leaving the pieces out. Here, they're now available for you to trade on your own without me being associated to the value creation. Mm-hmm. Therefore, long term, making anything else I create more valuable. That's what I would love to see happen, but I don't know if that's gonna. I don't know.
So, if anybody would like to see some of your works, like what are the best Instagrams to follow, or
just my website, Mr. Barnes, all spelled out, .com.
MISTERBARNES.com.
Yeah. I've got.
So that's the place you can check out. MrBarnes.com.
Yeah. I've got photography portfolios, drawing portfolios, collage portfolios, art portfolios, and then it might be connected to some other other sites out there like SoundCloud or things like that.
Are you doing anything with audio?
I'm not a musician. Like, I can't play guitar or drums, but I write a lot of poetry. I performed a lot of poetry. I've done poetry slams. I write a lot of songs that are like lullabies, sad songs, but I don't. There's no music accompaniment to it. It's just me droning on, sadly. But yeah, I've done audio. I've been working with audio or with spoken word or written art since college as well.
Good. I'm gonna go on some rabbit hole and check out some of this stuff. Well, Matt, thank you for taking time out of your day to visit with me this evening.
Hey, thanks for letting me talk about myself.
I enjoyed it. Thanks for joining us again, MrBarnes.com.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you. That's awesome.
Yeah.